What state do you think the US can survive without? Everyone talks about breaking up the United States, whether it's in the form of a civil war, a national divorce, or a state breaking away from the Union, like Texans always harp about. Last week we talked about states that the US could live without. Now obviously every state has its importance beyond that the residents happen to love it. Now these videos aren't suggesting any state should leave the US or anything of that nature. These are just thought experiment videos, and I would love to hear your intelligent take on the subject in the comment section below. It's a discussion. We're all in this together. The way I'm ranking these states is by nominal GDP and other. The other could be anything like, what it brings to the table. That makes it very important to the United States, like water, energy, history, etc. Got it? Get it? Good. Let's take a look. Number 10, Virginia. Virginia, the mother of presidents. No, really, 8 US presidents were born here. So Virginia takes its political influence very seriously. It's a state where the Revolutionary War was fought and won, so they'll happily remind you that without Virginia, you'd probably be sipping tea and calling soccer football. This is where American democracy was born, and they're still very proud of it over 200 and something years later. Virginia is also a military heavyweight thanks to the Pentagon and the state's numerous naval bases. This state is all about defense, and it should be no surprise that they're the cornerstone of U.S. security. So, if you like sleeping soundly at night, you can thank Virginia's military complex for that. Just don't expect to drive on the I-95 near D.C. without spending half of your life in traffic. Somehow, the state that keeps us safe at night can't figure out how to get traffic moving. And then there's the natural beauty. Virginia is a beautiful state, from the Blue Ridge Mountains to the Shenandoah Valley. So what makes Virginia so important? Well, there's a couple things. First, the GDP. With a GDP of about $759 billion a year. Give you an idea how high that is, Vermont's is $45 billion, Wyoming is $52 billion. You'll find the higher end later on in this video. And the other reasons. History, easily. We have far too much history going on in Virginia to let it go. On top of that, you've got the already mentioned naval bases, the CIA headquarters, and of course, Arlington National Cemetery. That right there is our history. Probably our best and most significant historical place. I mean, the people that are buried there from our wars, we always have to keep that. It's very important to the United States. Number 9, Michigan. Michigan, the state that's shaped like a mitten. Even though Michigan has some problems, it is still a very important state for a few different reasons. First off, they have Detroit, the Motor City. Michigan is home to the big 3 automakers, Ford, General Motors, and Chrysler. Without Michigan, you'd probably still be traveling by horse and buggy. Detroit made America mobile, and despite its economic ups and downs, it still is the heartbeat of American manufacturing. Michigan is also home to the Great Lakes, which supply a fifth of the world's fresh surface water. So while Californians are fighting over every last drop of water like some weird Mad Max movie, Michiganders are practically swimming in it. Lake Superior, Lake Michigan, Lake Huron, and Lake Erie all touch Michigan. The only one they don't touch, Lake Ontario. Now there is a little technical note I should mention because someone always brings it up whenever I talk about the Great Lakes. Lake Michigan and Lake Huron are actually one body of water. Now there's one area that connects them, and that's the Strait of Mackinac, which is right by Mackinac Island, which is right by Mackinac City and the Mackinac Bridge. By the way, it's spelt 2 different ways. There's Mackinac City with a W at the end, and there's Mackinac Bridge, Mackinac Strait with a C at the end. Either way, it's pronounced Mackinac. But with cars, water, and sports rivalries, Michigan is one of a kind, even if its winters are basically a 6-month sentence to live near a heater. My personal opinion, I think one of the main reasons for Michigan, and one coming up really soon, one of the main reasons they're so important to the United States is manufacturing, and not just normal manufacturing, wartime manufacturing. Michigan is also ranked 14th when it comes to nominal GDP, with $703 billion a year for their GDP. Like I said, there are other reasons: water, auto industry, and wartime manufacturing. Number 8, Georgia. Georgia, home of peaches, peanuts, and Coca-Cola. If you like soda, thank Georgia, where Coke was born and where they're probably still in a 100-year battle with Pepsi over the soul of the American people. Georgia's economy is thriving, thanks to big names like Coca-Cola, Delta Airlines, and CNN. So every time you're stuck watching breaking news at an airport, remember, you can thank Georgia. Atlanta is a big player here, known as the city in a forest because it has so many frickin' trees. Like, literally more than just about any other city in the US. It's got so many trees they don't know what to do with all of them. Atlanta's also the South's unofficial capital. It's where Southern hospitality meets booming business. They even made an entire film industry here, because why not add Hollywood of the South to their list? On top of it, it's an agricultural powerhouse. You probably don't go a day without consuming something from Georgia farms, from peaches to pecans. Georgia is feeding America's sweet tooth one delicious crop at a time. You also can't overlook its history. This state was the heart of the civil rights movement, giving us leaders like Martin Luther King Jr., whose influence is still felt around the globe to this day. Peaches and civil rights. That's Georgia in a nutshell. Georgia has the 8th ranked GDP in the United States, with $877 billion annually. There are other reasons: history, the business, and of course the food. Number 7, Ohio. Ohio, the heart of it all, or so they claim. This place is nestled comfortably between places you actually want to visit. Ohio is vital for so many reasons, especially for its presidents. Like Virginia, they've had a buttload come out of there. They've given the United States 7 presidents, none of whom you probably remember, but they were still presidents. They gave us Grant, Hayes, Garfield, Harrison, McKinley, Taft, and Harding. Grant's the only one anyone ever remembers. Regardless they're memorable or not, Ohioans will tell you they're responsible for shaping the country. Then of course there's Cleveland, where you'll find the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. Yes, because nothing says party like Ohio. From the Browns to the Buckeyes, Ohio is a sport-loving state with fans so dedicated that they don't even care about the weather. Blizzards, tornadoes, heat waves, they will tailgate through all of it. And they of course have Midwestern charm, but that's not a reason they're important to the United States. It's the manufacturing. Ohio has been a hub of manufacturing for decades and decades and decades. Though they are part of the Rust Belt, and the Rust Belt has seen some hard times, it's coming back. As manufacturing slowly filters back into the United States, you're going to see places like Michigan and Ohio really start to grow their economies. And Ohio's not that bad. Ohio's GDP is $922 billion annually, ranking them 9th in the nation. Besides GDP, the other reasons they're important: their history, manufacturing, food, and water, with Lake Erie right there. Number 6, Pennsylvania. Pennsylvania, home to the Liberty Bell, cheesecake, and the accent that's just the right mix of I've never left Philly and I drive an hour just to get a good Wawa hoagie. Philadelphia gives this state its claim to fame, not to mention its own brand of rough-around-the-edges charm. This is the birthplace of American independence, and they'll remind you of that every chance they get. The Declaration of Independence and Constitution were both signed in this state. So if you like freedom, think Pennsylvania. But Pennsylvania isn't all about founding fathers and cracked bells. It's also where we make most of the American steel, the backbone of the nation's infrastructure. Pittsburgh, affectionately known as the Steel City, once produced enough of that stuff to build, well, half of America. And while it may not be the booming industry it once was, the legacy is still there in every bridge, building, and skyscraper made with Pennsylvania grit. You also have the charm of Amish country. Pennsylvania has this fascinating blend of modern skyscrapers and horse-drawn buggies. It's a state where you can grab a Philly cheesesteak for lunch and then drive an hour and find yourself buying homemade jam and handcrafted furniture from people who've taken that old saying, "it was better back in the day," to heart. Like, really to heart. These people actually thought it was better to live like they did before it became a country. But it's all about Pennsylvania charm. Why are they at number 6? Well, it's their GDP. It's $1.017 trillion. That ranks them 6th in the nation. There are other reasons? The history. From Gettysburg to the Revolution. It all happened in Pennsylvania. There's also tons of farming and their water, of course. Lake Erie's right there. Number 5, Illinois. Illinois, or more accurately, Chicago, which is pretty much the only reason people remember Illinois exists. Chicago is the windy city that keeps us all entertained, with deep dish pizza, skyscrapers, and questionable weather patterns. It's also the transportation hub of the US, thanks to O'Hare Airport. Nearly every American has been delayed here at least once. A universal bonding experience that builds character and a tolerance for overpriced airport coffee. Chicago gave us jazz, improv comedy, and a style of hot dog that forbids ketchup. With cultural institutions like the Art Institute and the comedy clubs of Second City, Illinois has sharp humor, art, and a lot of memorable Saturday Night Live alumni. Seriously, the comedy that's come out of Chicago is amazing. Here's some of the comedians: Mike Myers, Amy Poehler, Dan Aykroyd, Tina Fey, Bill Murray, Steve Carell, John Candy, John Belushi, Chris Farley, Martin Short, Stephen Colbert, Tim Meadows, Eugene Levy, Catherine O'Hare, Dave Thomas, Gilda Radner, Harold Ramis, Alan Alda, and one of my favorites, Fred Willard. That list isn't even done. There's so many more. I went through Second City training when I was a comedian, not in Chicago. They had a LA like satellite class or something like that. I did some of the training. That's when I realized improv comedy was not my thing. I stuck to stand-up. But back to Illinois. Finally, Illinois has its corn. Yes, corn. The state produces more corn than you could ever dream of. Used for everything from food to ethanol. Illinois may not have mountains or oceanfront property. It makes up for it with cornfields that stretch as far as the eye can see. So this is why they're at number 5. The GDP of Illinois is $1.1 trillion. After Chicago and a few other cities, this is mostly farmland. So that's sort of amazing in itself. Illinois is ranked 5th. Other reasons? Water, food, and money. They got a lot of banking that goes on in Chicago. Number 4, Florida. Florida, America's warm, slightly chaotic backyard. When it's not making headlines for alligators and pools or bizarre headlines involving bizarre crimes, Florida is an incredibly important state. First and foremost, it's a retirement paradise. And if we got rid of it, 1 in 4 families would be saying goodbye to at least one of their grandparents. The Sunshine State gives those who've earned their Social Security checks a tropical haven where they can golf, complain about the humidity, and drive exactly 5 miles below the speed limit all the time. Another contribution: theme parks. Florida is basically one big amusement park. From Disney World to Universal Studios, Florida has perfected the art of over-the-top family entertainment. Love Mickey Mouse or hate him, you can't deny that millions flock to Florida every year, fueling the economy one churro at a time. And let's not forget NASA. Florida's Kennedy Space Center is where we send people and robots alike to explore the great unknown, aka the only place more unpredictable than Florida itself. While you might associate Florida with spring break chaos, don't overlook its role in space exploration. And of course, we have to thank Florida for giving the internet what is known as Florida Man memes. Thank you, Florida. I enjoy those. So why are they on the list at number 4? Well, their GDP is amazing. $1.6 trillion annually. That puts them at number 4. Other reasons? NASA, beaches, vacations, retirement, and money. Number 3, New York. New York, where dreams are made and subsequently crushed. New York City alone is the ultimate melting pot, where everyone's running late and nobody even knows where they're going. The financial capital of the world resides here on Wall Street. That's right, the land of skyscrapers and mega corporations is essential because it houses the economy-warping machine that is the New York Stock Exchange. Big finance, big dreams, and occasional big crashes. It's a wild ride in New York City. Then there's Broadway. New York is the cultural beacon where musicians are born, break out, and sometimes flop so hard that they're remembered for the wrong reasons. Theater, art, and museums galore make New York a mecca for creative souls who are okay with paying $5,000 a month for a shoebox to sleep in. But it's not all New York City. A lot of history went on in New York, the state itself. I mean, they have one of the prettiest parts of the country, in my opinion, the Finger Lakes region of New York. Like I've said millions of times, when you're talking about New York, most of the conversation is going to be New York City, but there's still a lot going in upstate and other parts of New York. Just, they're overshadowed in a big way by New York City. So why are they on this list? Well, their GDP is huge. $2.2 trillion. They are ranked 3rd in the nation. Other reasons? The stock exchange, all the money they make, and New York City. New York City is one of the most well-known cities on the planet, and it always has been, at least from the 1700s till about now. Number 2, Texas. Yeehaw! Let's talk about Texas. The only state where it's socially acceptable to wear cowboy boots to your business meeting. Yeah, it's a thing. Texas is huge, bold, and blessed with unrivaled pride that even Texans can't really explain. It has a bigger economy than most countries thanks to the oil and really the energy industry. The state's also got Austin, where tech bros gather in a desert oasis of tacos, live music, and tech conferences. They keep things weird, just like here in Portland, Oregon, which basically means more gluten-free, organic, plant-based hot dog stands than anywhere else in the world. If you're not into football, Texas worships the sport like a religion, so you might want to, keep that in mind. Friday Night Lights, college ball, and the Cowboys. You can't escape it, and why would you want to? Their high school football culture is shockingly amazing. They have stadiums that are better than most community colleges for high school teams. Texas is also important because it has a history as big as the landmass. Remember the Alamo? Texans sure do. They'll remind you. I made a comment how I went to the Alamo probably 2-3 years ago, and it was boring. I was bored in 5 minutes. I had so many people climb up my butt about that one. Also, even though they once were their own country, the United States would suffer without them. So why are they at number 2? Well, it's their GDP, $2.6 trillion. They are the second highest GDP in the nation. Other reasons, like I said, energy, oil, money, and history. All right, before we get to number 1, if you're thinking about moving to another state, there's a link for a website called Home and Money in the description area below. They can get you in touch with a real estate agent anywhere in the country to help you with your home buying process. All right, on to number 1. And number 1, California. Now, I know a bunch of you groaned because you've been pummeled with how horrible California is. It's got some problems, there's no denying that, but they make so much money and their economy is so big, it's the 5th largest economy in the world, meaning against other countries. Number 1 is the United States, number 2 is China, number 3, Germany, number 4, Japan, and if California was its own country, they'd be number 5. To be fair, Texas would be the 9th. If you combined the 13 states with the lowest economy in this country, they'd still come short of equaling California. But enough about their economy. The Golden State is where everyone wants to move until they realize what they pay every year for a studio apartment would buy you an acre and a house in Iowa. But California is very important for a lot of different reasons. We already talked about the money. This is the land of tech overlords. Silicon Valley isn't just a place, it's practically its own dimension where startups get funded on Tuesday and are worth billions on Wednesday. Hollywood? Yep, California's got that too. The state's glittery entertainment industry sets the trends, defines what's cool, and sometimes what's cringeworthy. And one thing that's overlooked about California by a lot of people, the agriculture. It's a giant that most people don't see coming. It's not all beaches, selfies, and high-rises. California produces a significant portion of the nation's fruit, vegetable, and nuts. Yes, that includes avocados, the millennial holy grail. So if you're eating vegetarian, you can thank California, unless you like eating corn because they don't grow much of it there. If they could just figure out their water situation, be one of the greatest states we have. I think it is one of the greatest states we have. It just has a lot of problems, and believe it or not, the water situation is one of them. So how'd they get on the list? Well, it's their GDP first and foremost, $4.08 trillion. That's their GDP. Puts them at number 1 by a bunch. Other reasons? The money, the ports, the tech, the nature, and the entertainment. So what do you think? Which ones do you think are more important than the ones that are on this list? I'd love to know. What other states can we not do without? All right, everyone. If you enjoyed this video, you'll probably like one of the 2 videos being suggested right now. Everybody have a great day. Be nice to each other.